It's always a tough job to talk after two excellent speakers who have blasted this place. Now let me try, in my own way. We are a biotech company based in Bangalore. We call ourselves CRISP, Contract Research Innovation Service Provider, unlike CRO. I'll tell you why we call ourselves CRISP. So I would like to thank the organizers for giving us this opportunity to be here. It's good to share with you what we think about career options, and what we'd also like to share talking to many postdocs returning back from the US, PhD postdocs from India. I wanted to share with you my experiences, our experiences. So in my first slide, the good news is the market is growing rapidly, and which means there's plenty of jobs in the coming years. Now, these are some examples of companies that you can go after. I have not captured all the companies that exist. There are many startups, and you also have multinational companies. Again, some of them are represented here. So there is a huge collection of companies that one can really go after. Now, what are the career options and what are the issues that are in front of us? There are different kinds of companies which are involved in different kinds of technologies, like, for example, vaccines, biosimilars, diagnostic research, discovery biology. Before I proceed, are there any chemists in this group? Only two. Very disappointed. Okay, so enzyme technologies, bioinformatics, CROs. So there are a host of different kinds of companies that one can look at, and you can basically decide going into the website and find out what are their core areas. How should I structure my CV? Whether my CV is relevant to this particular company. So it's very important to do a lot of research before applying to a particular company. And the other two speakers talked about passion. And it's very important not to join a company just to get a job, but seriously, you have to think whether you'll be suitable for that kind of a role. It's very important. Otherwise, there's going to be a huge misfit of expectations. And in today's industry kind of a situation, if you don't perform, it's very difficult to continue in that organization. So you have to make up your mind whether you're best suited for a non-research career path. For example, it could be regulatory. Today, if you talk about biologics, there's a huge dearth of people with domain expertise. You just need to catch up with some regulatory knowledge. So you could choose one of the areas could be a regulatory kind of an area, could be even business development, where you again require a lot of domain expertise. The other option, of course, is staying in academia. And third, if you would like to join an industry, definitely, as I said, there's huge opportunities today with many startups and with a lot of funding coming into industries by way of grants or by way of products. I think there's huge scope in an industry job. So where is the problem? The problem is we do see a huge surplus of PhD postdocs. And this has become more complicated with returnees from the West. Okay, so it's not only PhD postdocs returning. Now we have trained pair of hands coming from companies or biotechs, considering that the job situation in the West is not so good. You have many of these returnees. Now this has compounded the problem. Now, as a company, you can take only that many number of people into the company. Now, and there's a huge pool of postdocs, returnees with good experience. So how do you do the selection process? So that's one of the problems that industry now today faces. Okay. Now, in the next slide, I think some of the other speakers touched upon this. What are your differentiators? It's very important to list out how do I differ from another biotechnologist or a molecular biologist. It's very important to do this introspection and see if you could come up with a CV which would reflect your core expertise. When you, from an industry perspective, I can say that there are several CVs that have more or less similar kind of offerings. Now, how do we select A versus B? It's a tough job. So, in my mind, I feel it's important he or she should clearly define their key expertise areas. It's very important. And the CV should be tailor-made to express what he or she is good at. And I should say that in majority of the cases, it's generic, which makes it very difficult from an industry perspective to choose somebody. The other aspect which we see is postdocs, once they get an industry job, they want a cabin, they want to be more of a PowerPoint manager, we call. And that's not what industry is looking at. We want postdocs to contribute at the lab, at the bench, which is very key. Because science doesn't happen in the cabin. Okay? So this is an important aspect, and we see this as an alarming trend of postdocs not willing to go to the bench. Now, my request to all of you here is that the moment you move away from the bench to a non-working area, that is the day you have to start worrying about your CV. Because your domain expertise is science. The more you stick to it, if you want to be a scientist, it's better you contribute at the bench. So it's important that you stay that way. This is again from our experience. When we hire postdocs from US universities, from India, the industry has a start date and end date clearly defined for a project. It's not open-ended. So it is very important to understand that. And particularly in our kind of industry, we have this ostrich syndrome, where we work with a problem, we never highlight to our managers that we have a problem, this is not working, okay? So we are hoping that the problem will go away. It never goes. So it's important to discuss with the committee within the company, a scientific committee, address your problems, solve the problem, keep moving on, because it's very important, because every project has deadlines. You cannot afford to fail. Okay? So being proactive is very key, and it's very important to be up to date with literature knowledge. We often get excuses that I'm at the bench all the time, I don't have time to read. Okay? That's a big no. And again, since I don't know how many of you know what a contract research organization does, we do a lot of research work for multinational companies, biotech companies all over the world. And when you deal with clients, scientists on the other side of the world, communication is key, both written and oral. I think with the advent of this text messages, we're having a serious problem with the quality of email writing to the clients. It is really sad that people have lost it in terms of writing a scientific mail update to a client. That is very, very important. So you need to quickly unlearn that texting language and come up with a more serious scientific writing to a client who is 10,000 miles away. Okay, when they outsource research work to you, they would like to know on a daily basis what is happening in your lab. So it's today when we hire postdocs, we do two things. We see their communication, oral communication, and then after they do well in their interview, we ask them to write an abstract of their research work, mainly to see how good they are in writing. You'll be surprised. There are a good percentage of them have a lot of mistakes in a paragraph. Okay, which I think is a serious problem. I don't know, we are not recognizing this fact, but it is a serious problem. So again, as I said, there are many applicants with similar technical expertise. So it's very difficult to pick and choose one over the other because we are looking for differentiators. So, for example, if you're looking at fermentation, okay? Now, there are several features like clone development and so on and so forth, downstream purification. So, you need to have, when we will have master's level biologists working in the lab. And when postdocs come, they'll be at a senior level. So, you should have a good understanding of upstream, some amount of downstream to be able to guide, troubleshoot issues in the lab. So it's important to have, as he was saying, lateral thought process and knowledge base to be able to solve problems that often happen in the lab. Scale-up experience is one of the keys. Scale-up has a different meaning here, though. We have scientists who are very happy when they do the first few milligrams, okay? But in an industry, you need to go up in scale, okay? You need to have a process which will handle from milligrams to a larger quantity, okay? So your job is not done by just making the first few milligrams. So you need to be cognizant of that, I have done my job. So it is more like a team play where you're supposed to be contributing till the product is productized. So here are some grand details. I'm sure many of you are aware. People are returning back, or whoever is from postdocs from India, where I feel that it's important to align your skill sets with what the industry needs are. If you're looking at industry as an option, where you could also have these international grants, working with your postdoc supervisors and see if you could go after an area that is of interest to you and see if you could hone your skills in the new space and try to get some publications, get your hands wet in the new area. So this is very important before you get into an industry, because industry, again, I should say, you're expected to deliver from day one. Okay, so there is no honeymoon period. So you're expected to deliver from day one. And it's important, when postdocs, it's important that you need to have this aspect worked out, because science could be good unless you make the products. You will not be commended for whatever you have done. So it's important that you cross this bridge and you really think about productization. So a few slides about Anthem. So we're based in Bangalore, as I said. We are a contract research and innovation service provider. We are not a traditional CRO. Traditional CRO do not have an internal research program. We do have an internal research program, and this is not in conflict with what we do with our clients, but these are more like tools for discovery. So, we have biology, chemistry, you name it, we have all the pieces at Anthem. So we have over 350 people, and we've completed 7 years. We've done several hundred projects. So So core areas are medicinal chemistry, preclinical biology, process chemistry. We do a lot of assay biology, and then we have platform technology, which I'll talk to you about. And with all these, we take up projects which are integrated discovery projects from concept all the way to an IND. So a word about platform technologies. We have lentiviruses and shRNA. So using these, we have been able to create novel platforms. One of them, which I'll talk about, is the Genotox platform. And this gives you an idea. For this particular project, we used a cell biologist, a molecular biologist, and an assay biologist. So you need these three team players. And this is recently won a Boston Tech Award. In the previous year, won the Lockheed Martin Award. And these are some of the publications. So briefly about the technology, we found that there is a huge unmet need when it comes to screening compounds for genotoxicity. You have the US FDA prescribed tests, which are AIMS, chromosomal aberration, and micronucleus. Clearly, with what you've seen in the last few years, many drugs have been recalled from the market. Okay? Now, this is because these tests have not been able to filter it out. So what we did was to see if we could come up with a cell-based platform, a human cell-based platform, where we could introduce 3 genes, P21, P53, and GAD153. And they have luminometric luciferases, which allows you to do a luminometric readout. So when you screen compounds, okay, and if it is genotoxic, and if it goes through any of the pathways, you'll be able to figure out whether it's a P21 pathway or a P53 pathway or a GAD153 pathway. Now, this is high throughputable, and clearly we have tested, we have done compared with in vivo results, and this has more than 90% concordance with in vivo results. Now, this is very important for an early screen, and considering the cosmetic industry moving away from animal testing, we believe that this could be very useful for such an exercise. And this could be used as a pre-screen. I'm not saying AIMS should be done away with, but this could be used in addition to an AIMS test. It's always good to do this pre-screen, which allows you to filter out potentially genotoxic compounds. So this project again was done with these 3 biologists, and so postdocs managing this should have an understanding of these 3 areas, which helps in troubleshooting. So another example is we have created novel E. coli strains. Okay, these were engineered. One of the issues with fermentation, I'm sure many of you would realize that when you do fermentation, you always have this problem of downstream, which is the expensive part. You have to extract the protein out and then purify it. Now, if you're able to make the protein get secreted into the supernatant, then all of us know that the downstream becomes far more efficient, okay, and more economical. So we're able to engineer strains just to do that. So we've patented this particular finding, and we've done some proof of concept with several important enzymes. And we're working on sort of novel proteins of therapeutic interest, and we do see a great opportunity here to be able to have very high yield of protein into the supernatant, which will dramatically reduce the production costs. So to conclude, we definitely want the postdocs we hired to be highly proactive, a good team player, should be a very good contributor, significant contributor in the lab, and he or she should have the ability to think through an idea from lab to commercialization. So what we tell our scientists is, before you work on an idea, if you have a good idea, please write it down, but make sure there is a good market for it. Work backwards and then start working on the idea. So it's very important to have that commercial savvy kind of a attitude to be successful in an industry, because we are not looking at open-ended research. We have definitive timelines and definite budget for each of these ideas to be worked out. So we are talking about an innovation-driven product development. So I'll be very happy to take your questions if I do have time.